What's going on, everybody? This is another episode of the Sports Binge with your host, Will Cotchery. Hope all is well wherever you are, and I hope you guys been doing all right this summer so far, enjoying this NFL offseason. Well, you got to use enjoy to, like, with a grain of salt because it's not real football going on. But I hope you guys are making do without regular season ball as of today. So right now, I just want to introduce a new series that I'm doing throughout the course of the next several weeks. It's going to be me ranking the greatest teams in each of the NFL divisions all time. Now, when I say all time, I'm specifically only including or considering the teams from 2002 onward to the present day, and that's so important because in 2002, that's when the NFL realigned the divisions to include the Houston Texans. So instead of like the old formats from the past, we now have 8 divisions with 4 teams in each, because of their inclusion during their expansion 2002 season for the Texans. So I just wanted to throw that caveat out there as well. We're only considering teams, all the teams for each division from 2002 all the way up to the current day. Now, just another disclaimer: this is not I didn't use any specific or analytical algorithm to make these lists up. So it's just a top 10 teams from each division history. It's not no specific analytical data that I'm using. I'm just going off mainly just team record for that win-loss record for the regular season, and just going through like the division records and this other disclaimers from there. Because a lot of it is just really just close knit. It's close knit and just splitting hairs because there's so many similar win-loss records for all the teams. So it's just, if you just stand out in any specific particular way, and if you represented the NFC or the AFC in the conference championship, especially going to the Super Bowl, let alone winning it, those tend to get a lot of weight as well. So just like I said, it's just a lot of these teams are what and what. So just want to throw that out there as well. So don't get too emotional. It's just really just something pass the time. Just really the interesting topic that I came up with. So without further ado, here are the top 10 teams for each division's history series. Moving toward the NFC South division, we start off with number 10 with the 2005 Carolina Panthers. The team finished 11-5 for the regular season and 4-2 in divisional play, but they lost to the conference championship to the eventual NFC representatives, the Seattle Seahawks, led by MVP Shaun Alexander at running back and Matt Hasselbeck, who had his greatest season as a pro, in my opinion. This team was 2 years removed from representing the NFC in the Super Bowl against the Patriots in Houston. They were rebounded really well from last season and their season before in 2004, when they finished 7-9 overall and third in division play. Now, a great deal had to do with that with Steve Smith's injury. He only started one game in 2004. Musa Muhammad was unbelievable in 2004 in his place, catching 93 passes on 160 targets for 1,405 yards and 16 scores. Unreal, first-team All-Pro, of course, Pro Bowler. He was unbelievable that season. They were still using the two-headed monster with Mike Davis and Deshaun Foster in that season as well. And during this stretch, actually this 3-year stretch from 03 to 05, they was really well-rounded, especially defensively, which the greatest strength of the franchise, if you look from a totality standpoint, is the defensive side. Anyway, Julius Peppers, they were still really consistent on that side of the ball. This just ran into a better team in Seattle, who had their greatest season as a franchise ever had, and because they went up to represent the conference in the Super Bowl. At number 9, we had the 2006 New Orleans Saints. The team finished 10-6 in the regular season and 4-2 in the NFC South play. This team was just a feel-good story throughout the whole campaign, especially when the city of New Orleans and that whole region was just devastated and decimated by Hurricane Katrina, just one of the greatest natural disasters in the history of America. And it was such a sad thing to see throughout that 2005 season as the team weathered, just through playing in LSU Tiger Stadium. They really just displaced just like the community. Obviously to not that extent, but of course, they just really, there was a lot of moving parts that season in 05, but they really responded. It was just a culture change with bringing in Sean Payton, the new head coach, bringing in Drew Brees as a free agent, which in hindsight turned out to be the greatest free agent signing in the history of sports, especially in the NFL is concerned. The team was a pleasant surprise offensively, ranking 5th in scoring offense and number 1 in total offense. And they were not bad on defense, ranking 13th and 11th in points allowed and yards allowed, respectively. Now, this would be now for Saints fans, they see this is one of the greatest seasons they've had in the Sean Payton, Drew Brees era as far as defense is concerned. It was really not that bad defensively that year. And the crazy thing about it, despite finishing 10-6, they still earned the 2 seed in the playoffs, which they beat Philadelphia in an epic game as well before losing to Chicago in Illinois, just in a tough fashion. It's really a tough game all around, losing 39-14. When you have such a young team, it's just a tough ask for anybody to go up Chicago Bears players in their prime, like Brian Urlacher, Charles Tillman, and Tommy Harris, and Lance Briggs. That was just a tough ask, just looking back on it. The team still had Deuce McAllister in the fold. Reggie Bush was a rookie. Marcus Colston was a huge surprise as a rookie. Jar Evans, the list goes on. And Roman Harper as a rookie, as a safety. This was the greatest draft in the history of the franchise. Just what they did just so early on, they really contributed greatly right away. Now, this wasn't their fault, but they greatly benefited from being a 2 seed as a 10-6 team. They greatly benefited from a NFC that wasn't nearly as competitive as it became to be in the future, but nonetheless, they did what they had to do. They made the plays and got the wins as needed to get that 2 seed to get all the way to the conference championship game. Going to number 8 is the 2003 Carolina Panthers. At 11-5 with a 5-1 NFC South record, they end up representing the NFC conference in the Super Bowl against the Patriots, where they end up losing to New England and Tom Brady, 32-29. The team got off to a really hot start, starting off the year 5-0, including 2 overtime wins against Tampa Bay and Indianapolis, both on the road, might I add. They had a tough stretch in late November, early December, losing 3 straight, but they closed out the regular season with 3 wins in a row, 2 of which were on the road. I was really impressive about this team with the defense, especially, like I said earlier, the 2-headed monster with Deshaun Foster, Steve Davis, excuse me. I don't know why I kept saying Mike. So in postseason play, they took care of business at home against Dallas in the wild cards, winning 29-10 to advance to the divisional round against St. Louis, where they won in dramatic fashion, 29-23 in overtime with a walk-off Steve Smith big play touchdown reception. And they also knocked off Philadelphia 14-3 in the conference title game to even make the Super Bowl. It was where they lost, like I said, to the Patriots, as the Patriots get their second Super Bowl championship in 3 seasons. One thing about the Carolina Panthers altogether is they've had really great regular seasons, but they fizzled out in the postseason. Like they had a couple of 12-4 teams that really were talented, really were well-rounded, but they didn't muster up much playoff success. So that's why the 03 teams and 05 teams are really impressive and make this list greatly. Going up to number 7 is the 2016 Atlanta Falcons, finishing 11-5 throughout the regular season and 5-1 in divisional play. Opening the campaign with a loss at home to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they went on to win 4 straight and start out going into the bye week, 6-4. At this point, this is when they really took off. They finished the season 5-1 and just in dominant offensive fashion, scoring at least 30 points in 5 of those 6 games to end the regular season. And then Seattle, they took care of business 36-20, dominated Green Bay in the NFC title game 44-21. And this is their legacy, unfortunately, losing the Super Bowl to the New England Patriots as Tom Brady got his 5th championship in record-breaking comeback fashion. We all see the meme 28-3. They really dominated Atlanta really dominated that game. The start, of course, leading halfway through the 3rd quarter, but Tom Brady and his GOAT ways came back and brought the championship back to Boston. Now, the legacy of this Atlanta Falcons team was just historically great offense. Kyle Shanahan did wonders for this team, just becoming leading the offense. Everybody having a career year. Now, I will say this: a lot of people with that being said, a lot of people do give Kyle Shanahan most of the credit for Matt Ryan's career, great season. What people have to realize about Matt Ryan is that I think he's underappreciated. He really stabilized the franchise after the Vic years, really bring them back to postseason play and being a consistent threat, even though they weren't, maybe not been every year, but just every time they got to the playoffs, they were really formidable. Or just going into the playoffs, they were formidable as well. And then, and think about it, Matt Ryan has made the Pro Bowl under 3 different offensive coordinators, let alone both of his head coaches were defensive-minded guys, being Mike Smith and Dan Quinn. So I think he deserves more credit. But nonetheless, that's another topic for another day. This team was really a special team offensively. Had they won the Super Bowl, they would probably be a little higher on this list. But this is where they'd be today. At the 6th spot, we have last year's New Orleans Saints team. In 2018, 13-3 throughout the regular season, 4-2 in divisional play. The team got off to a slow and rocky start. Even they were explosive offensively, they lost to division rivals Tampa Bay Buccaneers at home in a shootout. But then right after that, they went on to win 10 in a row. They were what people call gangbusters, and they were unbelievable in that stretch. Just dominating the defending world champions Philadelphia Eagles in that stretch, even before that, beating the Rams at home, just in big Fox games, really sending a statement to the league, even avoiding a letdown in Cincinnati and Ohio. They really responded and deserved the title as the best team during that stretch. They really peaked offensively. I think during the stretch after the Philadelphia Eagles game, I heard Shannon Sharp say in the last 4 games at that time, they only punted 4 times, like 3 games, they only punted 4 times. Thomas Morstead wasn't getting played. He was just, he just was not getting any reps. That's why practice is so important for him, I guess you could say. But they were unstoppable. At least that's what it seemed like. Now, what hurt this team? Their play in December. They slowed down by losing on Thursday night to Dallas, and they really weren't the same offensively from that point on. It just wasn't at the same fluid pace that they moved before. And even though they were winning games, it just wasn't as they didn't have the same fluidity on offense. And this is where we really saw the team really get its respect defensively in that season, because at first they were really playing well on paper. They had Drew Brees and Sean Payton, but by the time December and the playoffs came around, you really saw the defense really doing its job. And this team really cooled off. We could talk about the controversial ending to the conference championship game, but they didn't make the plays nonetheless to get them to the Super Bowl. So I feel like that's where they fell off on this list right here. 13-3 could have been higher had they won the conference title game, maybe played better down the stretch and gotten to a Super Bowl, but this is where they peak at on this list right here. Cracking the top 5 are the 2012 Atlanta Falcons, finishing 13-3 in the regular season play, despite finishing 500 within the division. Now, this team was pretty well-rounded on paper. If you look at the statistics, offensively they were top 10 in scoring and yardage average per game. Now, defensively, they did finish 24th defensively in total yards allowed. However, they were finished top 5. They were finished 5th in scoring defense. So they were more of a bend but don't break type of defense. They had the Pro Bowl safety tandem of William Moore and Thomas Deku. Of course, offensively, they had the studs, Tony Gonzalez to Roddy White, still the best receiver on the team. Julio Jones. This is before Julio really took off as a player, because Roddy was still the best receiver of the two at that time. Of course, Matt Ryan was still spectacular in his own right. They really, and Michael the Burner Turner, they had their offense really carried this team. They really showed up this season as well, which was not a surprise, considering they made the playoffs the last 2 seasons, but they took it to the next step by going to the conference championship game, unfortunately losing to the 49ers at home in Atlanta. And even before that, they ended up beating the Legion of Boom at home. Roddy White burned Richard Sherman for a big touchdown play, which was one of the critical plays of the game, which was a tough matchup for any team, going against that defense, against Brandon Bowden and Richard Sherman, even though this was before they really peaked at their Super Bowl selves as a team. That still was a tough matchup, so they responded. Despite playing at home, they did respond and play well, and that's where they fall on this list at number 5. At number 4, we have the 2011 New Orleans Saints finishing 13-3 in the regular season, including 5-1 in divisional play. This is one of the greatest offensive teams in the history of the sport. Maybe not, it will not be revered as the greatest show on turf, and some 2013 Broncos, even the 2011 Packers were unbelievably successful offensively in that same season. They were 2011 Saints team was special. Headlined by Drew Brees, breaking Dan Marino's single season passing yardage record. From Darren Sproles breaking the league's all-purpose records in a season. Jimmy Graham in the second season was a budding superstar. They had all-pro offensive linemen. They really, and you got to think about it, this was out Reggie Bush, who went to Miami in that offseason, and Marcus Colston only played half the season. So this team, despite two of their best players offensively not being there, they still were unbelievably successful. They started off, I want to say 5-3. Yeah, they just went on a tear. By the time December rolled around, went on their Saints tear, their usual Saints tear, and Sean Payton, Drew Brees era, they just really peak in November and late in the season as well. After beating the upstart Detroit Lions, who made the playoffs for the first time in 12 seasons at that time, even though Calvin Johnson dominated that game, still was enough to overtake the Saints as they won 45-28 in the Dome in the wild card, before losing that heartbreaking loss with Vernon Davis scoring that go-ahead touchdown late in the game in Candlestick Park that afternoon on Sunday. Yeah. Now the Saints, the turnovers hurt them, but they still were in position. That's how great they were, because against that defense, with Patrick Willis, Justin Smith, Carlos Rogers, Deshaun Golson, those were some animals. During that stretch early in the Jim Harbaugh era, they were some beasts on that defensive front. This all over that field, and for them to still score 32 points on the road in that type of environment against that roster, that should be greatly admired. Had this team won the Super Bowl, they probably would have surpassed the 2009 team as the best in franchise history, but I still have them 2 in team history for what they did in that season. At number 3, we had the 2015 Carolina Panthers, 15-1, 5-1 in division, greatest team in the history of their franchise, by significantly. Led by MVP Cam Newton. Of course, you had the great defense with Thomas Davis making the Pro Bowl. Led by Luke Kuechly, you can never forget about him. K'Wan Short made the Pro Bowl. Josh Norman made the Pro Bowl. Kurt Coleman should have made it as a safety. He was on Last Word on Sports Pro Football's Pro Bowl snub, annual top 10 Pro Bowl snub list. He should have made the Pro Bowl after having 8 interceptions. Really a key part of that defense as well. And Cam Newton was just unstoppable that season, rightfully earning the MVP award. They just really dominated on both sides. They were such a complete team. They really were. Now, they didn't get the yardage offensively. They were 11th in yardage per game, but they led the league in scoring offense, which, in a point-driven, team-driven league, yeah, you can't complain about that. Defensively, they were 6th in both scoring defense and total defense. One of the elite units in the league that season. And then of course you can't forget about Greg Olsen as a tight end. So they were just well rounded, as I said. Now their biggest downfall was their offensive line play, despite having talented interior linemen with Trey Turner featured in that line. They really missed. They could have used Jordan Gross, who retired a couple years before. They really could have used his presence in that Super Bowl, because Mike Rimmers and Michael Orr, they got overwhelmed by DeMarcus Ware and Von Miller in Super Bowl 50, which was really the catalyst of Peyton getting his going away party as a Super Bowl champion. Now the crazy thing, had they won that Super Bowl, Coney Ealy would have been Super Bowl MVP. I think he had 3 sacks in that game, maybe 3.5. So they just had unbelievable playmakers all over the field that season. At number 2, we have the 2002 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Finally a Bucs sighting on this list. And they just have not been successful throughout the history, unfortunately for them, especially in the realignment era. They only had a couple playoff teams. 2002 team, which I just said, 05, 07. I think it may be all the playoff teams in the realignment era for the Buccaneers. So they just haven't really had much success, but obviously this team takes the cake as easily the greatest team in franchise history, and in my opinion, the second greatest team in NFC South history. So 12-4 in the regular season. They went 4-2 at divisional play. Both of those losses were to the Saints, by the way. which was a team that didn't make the playoffs that year. Go figure, any given Sunday. So can't be too surprised about that, I guess. Now, of course, the legacy of this team this season was their historically dominant defense, led by Derek Brooks as a linebacker, Warren Sapp on the inside of the line, Simeon Rice as a pass rusher, Anthony McFarland. All that defensive front was unbelievable. Yeah, cornerback Rondé Barber, John Lynch as a strong safety, just one of the hardest hitters in the history of the sport. And of course, Dexter Jackson, who wasn't even a star player, he was Super Bowl MVP as a safety. So that's crazy enough to think about that. Defense was just a story. Destroyed the Raiders in Super Bowl 37. They just got Rich Gannon threw 5 interceptions, despite having Jerry Rice and Tim Brown at the end of their career, still productive, but not against that historically dominant defense. And the crazy thing, what I looking back on the research that I did several months ago, I was casually looking, just when you're bored, you just do that type of stuff, I guess. And then when I was looking back in those highlights, they had just announced, because the final score was 48-21 in that game. Oakland had the ball, and they were trying, I guess you say, moving down the field, just trying to get some type of pride touchdown, I guess you could say, just to show that they do care somewhat. And then they had just announced Dexter Jackson being Super Bowl MVP until Dwight Smith had another pick six with 2 seconds left in the game. So I think he had 2 pick sixes in that game, which was he should have been MVP if they waited to the game. That's how they were just so stacked on that side of the ball, really carrying the team. They were now to John Gruden's credit, Brad Johnson was a Pro Bowler that season. Of course, they had Mike Allstott on that roster, so they had formidable pieces offensively, but they weren't going to win the Super Bowl without that all-time iconic defense, which right now has 2 Hall of Famers, Warren Sapp and Derek Brooks. Could have eventually had 5 when you put Rondé Barber, John Lynch, Simeon Rice in that mix as well. And what's crazy enough, I feel like the 2002 Buccaneers defense has gone somewhat underappreciated in recent memory when you consider, what happened with the Legion of Boom 2013 Seahawks, no-fly zone for 2015 Denver Broncos, and you hear the greats of the past, 85 Bears, 70s Steel Curtain Steelers, Doomsday defense of Dallas Cowboys. There's a lot of cores you could look at. And even the Eagles in the late 80s, early 90s, there were so many, and the 2000 Ravens, so many great defenses, but you don't really hear them a lot for whatever reason. But they really showed up in that season, really in the Tony Dungy era before he got fired, or just let go. In the mid to late 90s, early 2000s, you couldn't beat them. You couldn't really beat them like talking about, like you can now. Last but not least, finishing the list at number 1 is the 2009 New Orleans Saints. Starting the year 13-0, but even though they lost the last 3, Week 17 was just a wash game because they had already clinched the number 1 seed in the NFC playoffs. Finished 4-2 in divisional play. Greatest team in the history of the franchise. And it was a long, miserable history. I didn't live to see it, but it was some frustrating times for the fans. And just really have that great season, just weathering just certain trials throughout the season. They really were really a well-rounded team. The offense was their great, same usual selves, number 1 in the league again in the second straight season. Now defensively, on paper, they were 25th in total defense and yardage allowed, but they were second in the league with 39 takeaways. So that was the epitome of that Greg Williams iconic, the opportunistic style, this aggressive style, get after the passer, sack the quarterback, hit the quarterback, causing turnovers. So that was really their saving grace defensively, which even though it weren't good on paper, it was better than what they had leading up to that season in years past. And another plus is not only when you could get the takeaways, but you could score on them as well. That's just a huge plus and benefit. Darren Sharper was really the leader of that ball hawking defense, as he made Pro Bowl that year. They really had it all clicking in all cylinders that season, starting 13-0 to get the first overall seed, home field advantage throughout the playoffs by beating Arizona. and then following that up with an epic game walk-off victory against the Minnesota Vikings, who were arguably the best team in that season as well with the talent they had on paper, and they were just unbelievable in their own right. End up going back to Miami to beat the Colts in the Super Bowl. Like, got off to a relatively slow start, like trailing 10-6 at halftime, trailing 17-16 going to the fourth quarter. But they really just stayed patient. They didn't really panic, and they closed out the game as how the season was all throughout that year with a pick six. So they were just, this is easily the greatest Saints team ever. And so just like I said in previous videos for the series, just, it's all about splitting hairs. You may have some may say that Panthers are better, or the Bucs are better, but it's splitting hairs. But I feel like the 2009 team has the greatest case for the Saints as being the best team in division history. So that's my list. So just, I know everybody's gonna have their different opinions, and I was like, why you didn't put this team on it? But just, that's what the comment section's for. That's what the likes for. That's what the subscription's for. You can tell me all what you need to tell me on my YouTube channel. I'm just really eager to see what you guys have to hear. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to all my YouTube videos on my YouTube channel. You guys have a blessed day, and I'll see you in the next video.